Cook Memorial Park in Green Bay, Wisconsin is the site of the National Railroad Museum, where daily the trains roll.
We have about 75 plus pieces of rolling stock here, as well as thousands and thousands of railroad artifacts from throughout the United States.
Established in 1956 and through a joint act of Congress in 1958, this became the National Railroad Museum.
We were established basically kind of as a club. There was a group of local businessmen who were really interested in preserving locomotives and any rolling stock during the 1950s and early 1960s as they were gradually being scrapped for newer pieces.
We have anything from buttons off of conductors' uniforms to large trains like you see here at the museum. We have anything in between, so any clothing that the conductors wore or the folks that were working in the restaurant cars. We have dishes, so some of the plates that they used on the dining cars. We have tools that were used to fix the locomotives. We have a large photograph and slide collection. We have books. Our oldest book goes back to 1836, and we have anything modern along with technical manuals for the locomotives.
Some of the big things at the museum are the Pullman Porter exhibit, the Aero Train, and the Big Boy.
We have one of 8 Union Pacific Railroad Big Boy locomotives. Arguably, they are some of the largest or among the largest locomotives in the world. The Big Boy weighs in at 1.18 million pounds, is 132 feet 9 7/8 inches long, and to be able to stand next to it is incredible. To get in the cab is even more phenomenal, and that's one of the things you can see here at the museum. General Motors back in the mid-50s built an experimental train called the Aero Train. We not only have the builder's model that they created for that, but we have one of 2 prototypes that were actually built. And it's a neat train because all the technology was recycled to be used in the Aero Train, and it really shows the creativity that the railroads were trying to use to draw people away from their automobiles and airplanes and back to the highways. We have an exhibit called Pullman Porters from Service to Civil Rights. A look at how the Pullman Porters struggled for 12 years to form the first minority labor union here in the U.S., and then how they went on to become the backbone of the American Civil Rights Movement. Rich in history. A lot of things that when you walk in, you'll be awed by the size of the trains, but when you start peeling back the surface and seeing what's underneath, you'll be incredibly amazed by the story that the machines can tell.
Another major exhibit at the museum is the Bauer drumhead collection. A drumhead is a device that was used to advertise and identify trains back when there was more than one passenger train company.
They were the large round signs that were placed on the backs of the locomotives, or back of the trains rather, so you knew exactly what route those were going. They went on specific routes, and one person collected about 40 of these and donated them to the museum. And they were very important because the railroads would have their own specific brands. So every line had their own logo, they had their own specific things they would have in their dining cars in terms of meals that they would serve. They would really, if they were going through the Southwest in the United States, they'd show off the pictures, the grand pictures of the U.S., or depending on where they were going. So these were really the images of the locomotive or the trains themselves.
One way the railroads have affected us in the past that a lot of people really don't realize, ask yourself what time zone you're in. The railroads invented our time zones. In Wisconsin, going back to the 1840s, 1850s, there was literally dozens of different time zones, and the railroads all operated on scheduled time. Well, if different communities have different times, how can you safely operate a railroad? Time zones were a railroad invention. There's dozens and dozens of things like that that the railroads have left us over history that are still important to us today in one way or another.
The newest addition to the National Railroad Museum is the children's area. It explains the basics about railroading.
What's a freight car? How do people travel by train? Those types of things.
The National Railroad Museum sits on 33 acres along the scenic Fox River. It has steam engines, diesel engines, trains that take you across the span of railroad history.
and then really still showing how they're important today. When you're going to Walmart, you're still getting things that were transported by train. So if that train breaks down, you can't buy things. So that still impacts your life today.